Opinion editor and author of Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women, Batya Ungar-Sargon is here. I don't think I've ever seen you chuckle like that before. Host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast, syndicated Chris Hahn radio show, NewsNation political contributor Chris Hahn is with us. Thank you. Welcome. All right. I'm going to ask the taboo question, right? Okay. How, after what the Democratic Party has done on Israel, and especially on these protests, how can any Jew support Democrats?
Well,
right now?
I'm half Jewish. My grandparents survived the Holocaust.
Yep.
And I'm
Hence why you were selected for this panel.
Oh, yeah. You know that about me. We've talked about this. I think the Democratic Party has been very good on Jewish issues. The number one person in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, my former boss, is himself a Jew.
Right. By the way, who is shockingly silent about everything that happened at Columbia and the things that were being said.
I mean, I don't think it's the job of the U.S. Senate and the President of the United States to determine policies at Columbia University. And when the city of New York got involved, it was over immediately. And I don't think they handled it well up there. I don't think anti-Semitism is free speech. I don't think, yelling at students who are walking by who are not participating in protests is free speech. But I also don't think it's the job of Congress to get involved. I thought when the Speaker of the House and even when the Democrats went up there, it was kind of pandering for the cameras.
Oh, come on. Chris, you and I both know that during BLM, every Democratic politician could not wait to talk about the protests and about how important they were and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And by the way, after January 6th, every Democrat couldn't wait to condemn.
Well, January 6th was something that should be condemned because it was a political action taken
by... And what happened at Columbia shouldn't be...
direction. Students protest. And students sometimes don't say the right things, and sometimes they say something that are completely stupid and uneducated. It makes me question the money that they're paying to go to Columbia when they're chanting Intifada and from the river to the sea.
I've never seen you chuckle or be as quiet in a conversation as this one.
I think I told her off camera. Be funny. Don't try to win the war.
I'm sorry. Donald Trump is very funny.
He is funny.
Especially funny when he's saying something that you can tell on his face he knows he shouldn't be saying, right?
Right.
A lot of Jews are saying this amongst themselves at the Shabbat meal, at the Shabbat table, arguing about, which side really has our best interests at heart. It's a totally different matter for Trump to come out and just say it, right? I will say that to me, I'm a little bit closer, I think, to Chris's position, which is that I don't think that this is really about Jews and about Israel. I think this is about the class divide. The Democratic Party is now the party of the over-credentialed college elites and the dependent poor. And if you are in one of those groups, which is where a lot of Jews find themselves, right? You have a lot of very poor Hasidic Jews and then, a lot of very educated Jews. That is where your economic interests are. And so, of course, you're going to keep voting for those people. If you are a working class Jew, on the other hand, of course, you're going to find yourself voting for Donald Trump because that is where the trend of the working class is going.
As a half Jew with a JD, I think President Biden has done a great job on Israel. He stood up for them. I can't wait to hear what he says next week when he goes to the Holocaust Museum and addresses the anti-Semitism that's been on the rise in this country.
Well, I just make a point about that, which is that he's waffled on Israel, so I don't agree with that. However, very few Americans, including very few American Jews, vote on foreign policy and vote on Israel. And that is very important to point out. Israel policy is something that a lot of Christians feel very strongly about, and a lot of Jews...
Right, but hold on. Before right now, and maybe to a little bit of an extent in 2012 with Obama, foreign policies related to Israel was bipartisan in America. It was sacrosanct. There was never a discussion about limiting aid. There was never a discussion about trying to, you're going to take issue with this, but handcuff the Israeli military when they're defending themselves. That wasn't ever a partisan issue. It is now. So does that not change the calculus?
Look, I do not believe we should be handcuffing the Israeli military. I don't think President Biden has handcuffed the Israeli military. I do think that there are some humanitarian issues that should be addressed there, and I think that anybody that sees what's going on there would be concerned about that too. As democracies, we should be better when we're going into places and to try to take care of the civilians there. That said, look, the protests that are going around right now, I'm on a board of a university. I saw some protests at my university. To me, you're saying divest. Well, get rid of your cell phone that was made in China if you're so concerned about human rights and violations that are going on there. I don't understand the disconnect that people don't understand.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.